Hey girl gang, welcome back to week 4 of our summer study entitled Pivot Your Perspective. Pastor Jessica here, and I'm so thankful that you have stayed with us every step of the way. Whether you're tuning in with our podcast or YouTube channel or watching this live with a group or on Zoom, I am so thankful that you are here. And we are going to be talking about another way to pivot your perspective. If you have taken a look around right now, you have probably realized that there's this real thing of space and distance and aloneness during COVID-19. And isn't it interesting that we've been quarantined at home for a season? Schools have been shut down, churches have been shut down, sports, clubs, events, gatherings, and even when you do gather, there's this socially distanced thing that we have to participate in for our safety, and all of it compounded together. And I wouldn't be surprised if you have felt alone at some part in the journey in the last 4 months. If you have felt alone in the reality of what is life, if you have felt alone, maybe with all of the people home right now with you, maybe a spouse is home and all the siblings are home and all the kids and the cousins and the aunts and the uncles, everybody's just together. You know, having people around you doesn't necessarily mean you don't feel alone. Maybe you've wrestled with isolation. Maybe this has been very hard for you emotionally, physically, mentally, and even spiritually. I know for me personally, I'm a people person by nature. I thrive off the energy of people. And there have been points where I've really loved the shift and the slowing down of certain things in my life. And then there's other aspects that I really have wrestled with. And if you've asked yourself those tough questions of, am I alone? Who's in my life? Who's in my world? You're asking a good question, because I want to encourage you that you cannot be on this journey serving Jesus without asking that question: who is in my community? Who is in my tribe? Who is in my world? Who is in my sphere of influence that I can count on, that I can go to, that I'm building a relationship with? And how you answer that question will determine what you really take away from this study today. What we're talking about is pivoting our perspective from feeling alone to partnering up to the people and the places that God has for you. And I want to read you a few quotes that I love from people that you'll probably recognize when I read you their names. And the first one is this: Coretta Scott King. She says this: "The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members." Do you have people who are compassionate towards you, that you're compassionate towards them? That's a reflection of the community. Helen Keller: "Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much." Another great quote by Henry Norwin. It says, "Community is where humility and glory touch." I love that. It's a deep quote. And what that reminds me of is that when we have people that we're doing life with that support us and we support them, and we're going to talk about that, it's amazing how we get a good dose of humility. We actually see ourselves for who we really are. We see the raw realness of our weaknesses and our strengths, right? Come on now. We see a reflection of our weaknesses and our areas that we struggle in within the community around us. That's why we need people to help us stay on this path. But there's also glory in community. We also find energy and strength. We find hope. We find endurance. We find resilience. We find forgiveness. We find grace. These are things that you discover within a relationship with Jesus. But on a practical, real life level, you work them out within a community. It's one thing to have it with Jesus. It's another thing to work it out with people. And let me just tell you, lovely, you need it with Jesus, and you need it with real life flesh and blood people. And isn't it interesting, this season that we've been with of social distancing and being quarantined from home, it almost like it causes us to wrestle with how close we get to people and how we engage with people, not only on a physical level, but also on an emotional level. And if you've asked yourself that question, am I alone in this season? And who's really for me? You're asking good questions. Now, the answers might not feel very good, but I want to let you know you can't get to the light until you grapple with the dark. And so if you can truly answer those questions and say, I do feel alone and I do not have a community of people around me, you've done the first step of the hardest part of this journey. You've acknowledged where you are at. The second part is what we're going to talk about here within this study. But I want to remind you that community is not just a sociological or an emotional construct, it's a biblical one. And Jesus had a lot to say about it. I want to share with you 3 scriptures, and the first one is this, Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow sister. But woe to her who is alone when she falls and has not another to lift her up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A 3-fold cord is not quickly broken. There is power in community. There is power in knowing that when you struggle today, that you have somebody or someone's that you can call up and they can pray for you right there in a minute. That you have people that will encourage you. That you have people that you can unite together with, and that you can withstand the struggle that you're facing. And I'm not just talking about a romantic relationship. I'm talking about community. I'm talking about peers and godly relationships and female friendships. I'm talking about a community of people that you know that when you have obstacles outside of your control, you know that there has been an incredible cultivation of community that's surrounding you. That's what Ecclesiastes is talking about. Acts 2, 42 through 47 says this, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. Now, you're probably saying, who's they? They is a body of believers. It's the church. It's Jesus followers. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers, and all came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts. You know that verse, it describes an incredible community of people who, number one, are just loving Jesus together. They're working out their salvation, not alone, but together, and realizing, wow, that person inspires me, or wow, I can teach this other person and show them certain things in the Bible. But also, you know what else happens? They hang out together. Breaking the bread in the Bible is just a fancy way of saying, let's go get a sushi roll. Let's go get a taco. Let's go get a burrito. Let's go get some coffee at Starbucks. Let's go somewhere. Let's go sit and have a meal together. Breaking bread is that fellowship over food. It's so powerful. Even back in the Bible days, it's like they had it figured out. Who are you breaking bread with? Who are you loving Jesus with? You know, the other part of this is that they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all. So what they're doing here is they're saying, I have something that can help meet the need over here. And let me give what I have to help. Can you imagine a community of believers where every single person said, what I have is yours? What do you need? How can I help? For some of you, you're probably thinking, you know, Jessica, I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of possessions. I'm not even necessarily talking about that. You know what? You do have time. You have talent. You also have treasure. For some of you who don't have time and a talent, or if you haven't discovered that talent, you don't have a lot of time, but you do have money to give to a need. You donate it. You give it. You bless other people. This is a community of people. This is what happens. It's the giving and the taking. And you know what else happened? They attended the temple together. They went to church together. We are in such a unique season where some churches are open, some churches are online, some churches have increased safety measures for you to attend. But here's the thing. If you can freely worship with people, why not? Do it with a community of people that you love. If you don't have a church home, Find a church home that you can say, I am planted here. These are my people, and we're going to watch online together. I'm going to show up every time there's an online service and make sure I'm engaging. If they have an in-person service, I'm going to have a great attitude about whatever it is that they're asking, and I'm going to go to church, and I'm going to be present, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to worship Jesus. You know, other part of this verse, they received their food with glad and generous hearts. They were just thankful. When you're in a community of people, when you're partnering up with other lovelies, when you have friendships, there's a gratefulness and a thankfulness that takes place. And that keeps your feet on the ground, realizing that people are precious and what you have is a gift. And the time that you have with people is special. And that even if some people are what I like to call EGRs, extra grace required, that goodness, God has had extra grace with you. Can't we extend that same grace to others? Hebrews 10, 24 through 25 says this, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love. Not stir up one another for meanness or to gossip or to slander. Stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Here's the thing. For some of you, you might put on the back burner actually making time for people in your relationships. And here in the Bible, it says, don't neglect it, as is the habit of some. It's amazing that the writer of Hebrews knew there are people that were probably like, I don't have a lot of time to meet with people or build relationships or be in a community together. I'm focusing on work right now. Hebrews knew, and they're calling you out. Stop neglecting it. Don't neglect the fact that you need people and people need you. And here's some science for you, for all my little science nerds there. It says, evidence from more than 30 years of research suggests a profound relationship between social participation and human health and well-being. You guys, Bible says, now science says, people who hold meaningful roles in supportive social contexts, here's the cool part, live longer, get sick less often, suffer less disability, and recover fast from life-threatening events. Think about a situation that you've gone through, grief, loss, devastation. If you were alone, the magnitude of that weight and burden that you walked with. If you walked in another event or through another grief or crisis with people, just look at the differences. And also realizing that you need people not only for your mental well-being, but also your physical well-being. It is there. We are body, soul, and spirit. And there is something about people that infuses us, that ignites us, that gives us the energy and the stamina. Now, just take a people person, an extrovert who finds energy, physical energy around being with other people. Take an introvert for another situation. Introverts, it's not that they don't like relationships, it's they process their world on more of an introvert level, and then they process with a smaller group of people. They still need people. God has made us so unique and so wonderful and amazing. There's not one of us that is the same. And so when you get a group of people together, and when you get a crowd of people together, the varieties of personalities and perspectives and sassiness and style and opinions and just ways things happen, the talents that unfold, it's like the best science project on the planet. I love getting people together for the pure fact of seeing people interact with one another. Find hope, find love, find support, find meaning, find Jesus, find health, find support, find meaningful things in their life. This is community. So lovely, I want to ask you two questions. First one is this: what community are you partnering up in? What community? Now, if you can't answer that question honestly, and I appreciate everybody being honest, then I want to ask you this: what part are you going to play in partnering up with a community? So the first question is what community are you a part of? If you don't have one, find one. Girl Gang is a community. Dive right into it. Pneuma Life Church is a community. Dive right into it. You don't have to be a part of both. Be a part of one. Be a part of a community. But what community are you partnering up in? And then I want to ask you this: what part are you playing in that community? What part are you contributing? Are you an active member who's giving towards people, supporting people? encouraging, showing up when those activities and events and things happen within that community, showing up for people when they have crisis in their life, showing up for people when they have incredible milestones and highlights in their life. How are you playing a part in that community, serving? Whatever it is, play a part in your community. Now, in order to pivot from feeling alone or being alone to knowing and being in a partnership with people you need, I want to share with you these 3 things. First and foremost is this: be willing to find a healthy community to partner with them. Just like I said, be willing to do the work. Now, the key word there is healthy, okay? There are groups of people everywhere on this planet, and not all of them, Missy, are healthy and positive and supportive and uplifting. You probably have experienced those already. You know me, lots of personality, lots of sass, lots of independence. But here's the thing, I am not drama. I am not destructive. And God has shown me the difference between the two, because there's nothing worse than a group of women coming together, tearing one another down. Women need to come together to build each other up. And that is what we will do. So the goal is to find a healthy community. And you know what signs of health are? Growth, support, women who tell you the truth in love, and resilience. If there's an issue, if there's a challenge, if there's a setback, people are willing to do their part and get right back on track. That is a sign of health. Not that you avoid tough conversations and tough situations, but that you're willing to work through them and get right back on track. The second thing is this: in order to pivot, be willing to do the work to get involved. I wish community and relationships and friendships were just easy peasy, just like this. I wish you could just wake up one day and say, you know what? I really like those people over there. I'm going to be friends with them. I'm going to be in that community right there. And ring, bing, you're there. Everything's hunky-dory. Everybody loves each other. Everybody knows each other. No, it takes time and work and energy. It takes resilience. It takes a lot of I'm sorry's. It takes a lot of would you forgive me? It will take a lot of tell me about your day. It'll take a lot of how can I serve you and help you? It'll take a lot of hey, let's go hang out together. It'll take a lot of what can I do to be an answer to a problem that's happening right now in your community. It will take those things. And let me just tell you, it takes work and it takes sacrifice. But I want to remind you, whatever you sacrifice, the measure that you sacrifice, the measure that you give, God will always bring it back to you. Whether you experience all of it here on earth or you experience it in heaven, God's promises are the measure that you sow, you will reap. It's a promise from God. Proverbs 27:10 says this: do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. You know what the verse is pretty much saying? Listen, family is great, and people that you might have had long relationships with that don't live around you, are not close with you, are not doing life with you, they're all great. They have a place in your life. But in the time of calamity, you need a neighbor, you need a friend, you need a community, you need people who are going to be like, I'm stepping up. How can I bring you a meal? What can I do? How can I pray for you? That's what you need. The third thing is this: be willing to do the work to stay involved. So number 2 was be willing to do the work to get involved. That's getting to know people. Be willing to do the work to stay involved. And Colossians 3:13 says this: bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. That is a fancy way of saying, guess what? You're going to have some drama. You're going to have some conflict. You're going to have some misunderstandings. You're going to have some of these things. You and me, we are human. We will make mistakes. We will drop the ball. Leaders, other people, influences, friends, girlfriends, all of the above, they will fail you. They will hurt you. The signs of a healthy community is how people come together in calamity, in chaos, in confrontation, in confusion, and work those 3 things out. But you have a part to play. And if you want to stay in a community, you have to be willing to do the work to stay in that community. Because guess what? The minute somebody tries to isolate themselves from community, people can ask you to come back as much as they want, but you have a part to play. Romans 12:4-5 says this: for as in one body we have many members, And the members do not all have the same function, though many are one body in Christ and individual members one of another. In other words, saying we're all different, we all have different functions, but we need each other. So be willing to do the work to stay involved. So number one, be willing to find a healthy community to partner up in. Number two, be willing to do the work to get involved in a community. Get to know people, reach out, ask, invite, inquire. Number three, be willing to do the work to stay involved. Communicate, respond to communication, do your part, sign up to serve, ask how you can give and be a part of something. These are all the things and how we pivot from that feeling of being alone to all the way to partnering up with somebody. You need people. You need people to pray for you. Now, lovelies, this is the point in the lesson where we're going to have some questions for you to dialogue. And as the questions pop up on the screen, pause it, get with your group leader or whomever you're hanging out with. Or if you're on your own and you're just taking notes and writing down things in a journal, kudos to you for being here and showing up, a part of the Girl Gang community. Answer those questions honestly. We are for you. We are with you. And don't forget about the printout where you can actually hold yourself accountable and other people accountable about partnering up. But lovely, we are so thankful that you tuned in. We're so thankful that you're here. We love you. We're praying for you, and we'll see you next week.